So now I want to spend some time explaining to you why Palestinians and Israelis hate each other so much. Why, when peace has already been declared in other parts of the world, the Irish were able to make some kind of a deal. Other parts of the world, the Vietnamese and the Americans were able to do it. And I thought that would never happen. Why is it that this has gone on since 1948? Because it's actually gone on a lot longer than that. I want to give you a history of the background of this region. And let me tell you how far we have to go back. We have to go back to 1250 BC, when a group called the Israelites settled the land of Canaan on this little tiny spit of land on the eastern Mediterranean. That's when it all started. The country, the land of Israel. The Israelites got in there and became a nation. King David. So when Israel claims it has been there for millennia, they go back 3,000 years, over 3,000 years. That's their claim. When the Arabs say, you have no business here, this is not your land. 3,000 years we've been on this land. King Solomon, 961 to 922 BC, construction of the first temple. Very important. And then Israel divides into two kingdoms. The southern kingdom, Judah, conquered by the Babylonians, they drive everybody out. The Jews go into exile, they destroy the temple. 70 years later, the Jews come back, and they build the second temple. The Romans come in. This is the time of Jesus. The Romans conquer this area. Everybody is under the control of the Romans. 73 AD, the second temple is destroyed. Why is that so important that we go back 2,000 years to 73 AD? Because that place where the temple is one of the most bizarre places in the world. Because on top of the Temple Mount sits two mosques that were put there by the Arabs, where the temple used to be. The holiest place in all of Judaism is the place that holds up those two mosques, that Western Wall. And on top of that is the second or third holiest place of all of Islam. You got a little bit of contention there, don't you think? Just a little bit. It's basically like if Jesus and Muhammad both died on exactly the same spot. And both sides claimed this is the holiest spot in our religion. Let's go to war for it. The Arabs have been there for a while, since 638 AD. They came in, and Arab rule of that part of the world has been there literally from 638 AD to literally the start of this century. Some 1,400 years, 1,200 years. So that's their claim to fame. So when the Arabs say, we've always been here, they claim 1,200 years. Or 1,400 years the Arabs have been there. So let's go back to the 1800s. Let's start the modern era. And let me explain to you what's going on. The land currently known as Israel was once an area called Palestine. For more than 1,200 years, the dominant population there was Arabic. Starting around the 1880s, a steady stream of Jews began to enter in the area and began buying land from the Arabs. They started just buying it up. Turns out that many of the wealthy landowning Arabs were absentee landlords who made a quick buck by selling this land to the new Jewish settlers. Now, this obviously upset the peasant Arab farmers who are already living there, who believe they had the right to live and cultivate and transfer these properties to their families, although title was held by these absentee landlords. Now, just around this time, many of the Jews entering into Palestine were part of a group belonging to the Zionist movement. Now, you're going to hear that word a lot, the Zionist entity. See, the Arabs are not particularly anti-Jew. They're anti-Zionist, the creation of the state of Israel. And this group, the Zionists, had one goal, to redeem the land of Palestine as the inalienable possession of the Jewish people. And what they did was create a Jewish national fund, which was organized to purchase the land from Arab landowners. And this practice went on for decades. And in temples all over the world, in Jewish schools all over the world. My parents tell me about this. When my dad went to Hebrew school in Yugoslavia, there was a little box that you go in and you'd put your coins in every single time you go to school, a penny here, a nickel there in your money. And that all went to buy land from the Arabs for the creation of the state of Israel. It all went for the Zionist land of Israel. So let's go to 1914, several months before the start of World War I. Both the Zionist Jews and the Arabs are hoping to achieve a separate sovereign state for themselves. The Jews want to increase their stake in the population of Palestine. The Arabs are fighting among themselves to figure out what kind of Palestine they want. Now, a key player who exploited this situation was a guy called Chaim Weizmann. He was a scientist, he was a master of European diplomacy, and he had very strong ties to Britain. And Weizmann realized the key to the future of Palestine was going to be decided by the global politics at the time. And it turns out history proved him exactly right. Global politics was going to control all of this. Now, the following story is going to be a very intricate soap opera, so you got to pay extra close attention because this is very complicated stuff. World War I breaks out. Great Britain has a lot of interest in the Mideast region, including Palestine. Even though it was a great strategic importance to the Brits, Britain's police in the Middle East were a confusing mess. They had no idea what they were doing. For example, the British commissioner to Egypt, Sir Henry McMahon, was corresponding with Arab leader Sharif Hussein. In a letter dates July 14, 1915, Sharif proposed an area of land for total Arab independence. This was the entire Arabian Peninsula, Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine, governed by Sharif and his family. Well, 3 months later, McMahon responds to the British that the British government will support Sharif's goal for Arab independence once the war is over. Great. So Sharif thinks that he's going to get all this land, Arab. Meanwhile, the British government is negotiating with the French over the same area. In February of 1916, the Asia Minor Agreement is signed up, divvying up the Middle East between the French and the British. For Palestine, that area now known as Israel and the West Bank, it was destined to be controlled by the French, the British, and the Russians. So now you have the second agreement between the Brits and the French, sort of ignoring the first. But let's go to the third agreement, going on at the same time. This one affects the region for years to come. British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour has an idea. You'll hear this, the Balfour Declaration used a lot. He wanted his government to establish a presence in Palestine. Why? Because the British are planning to attack Syria from bases in Egypt. They had 300,000 troops ready for this, and they figured Palestine would be of great strategic importance to them. But the Brits needed an ally to run the country of Palestine or that area, so they turned to the Jews. So who comes in to help out Balfour's idea? Chaim Weizmann, the leader of the Zionist movement. So a fourth deal is cut at the same time. On November 2nd, 1917, a document called the Balfour Declaration was presented. The paper stipulated the British government was sympathetic to the Zionist cause and favorably agreed to, quote, the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. And they would help the Zionists achieve their goal. Keep in mind, by the way, Palestine is not a country at any point here. And the Palestinians claim there was a country of Palestine, simply don't. The Palestinians, by the way, prior to the 67 war were actually Jordanians, but that's besides the point. There was this proviso in the Balfour Declaration. Let it be clearly understood, nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So here's what the Balfour Declaration says. Yep, the Jews need a Jewish homeland. We love the Jews. We need the Jews. You guys can have a Jewish homeland, but nothing you do is going to prejudice the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. In other words, you can't screw up the Arabs' ownership of anything. Huh? Wait a sec, you're all on the same land. Well, the Zionists were overjoyed at the Balfour Declaration because now their organization had clout from a world superpower, the Brits, and their dream of homeland was closer to reality.